I love color, and this is a layout that has tons and tons of color. So if we take a peek, you can see it has these really cool sort of rainbow order of splashes and dashes and drips and all sorts of stuff, and it's super easy to do, okay? So I'm working on a piece of watercolor paper, which is important because it's a nice thick and heavy paper. You'll notice that this is not a square and it's not 12 by 12, and that's fine because you can cut it down to whatever size you want it to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to add some stamping, and I'm going to use a stamp roller to add my stamping. Now, if you are stamping before you watercolor, one of the things that's really important is you need to make sure that the ink you're using is going to be waterproof, because if you use a dye-based ink, one of the problems is that the ink will run everywhere, and you don't want that, okay? So you can see I went off the edges again to create something that looks like an actual piece of pattern paper. You want to make sure to go off the edges. Next up, I'm going to take my watercolors and I'm going to go ahead in rainbow order. And what I mean by rainbow order is I'm going to start with my red, and you remember that old Roy G. Biv. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to do orange, go ahead into some yellow. Now the reason for rainbow order is when you're using a lot of different colors, it's more pleasing to the eye if you go in rainbow order, because that's something that we're used to seeing, as opposed to if you just sort of haphazardly put them down. So if you ever want to use a ton of color on something, I encourage you to stick with the colors of the rainbow. It's kind of what nature created, so it makes it easy for our eyes to digest. Now, how do I get those drips? Well, there are a couple different things. The first thing is I'm going to go ahead and spray with some water, and that's going to just start the drips down. There you can see them going. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back with each of my colors and I'm going to add even more pigment. And what will happen is in the areas where the drips were, it's going to add just more color and pigment to go down there. Now, obviously, when I'm home, I don't necessarily hold it up away from myself like this, but I thought it would be a little bit hard to see for you if I didn't do that. So once I have added all of these different things and I've encouraged my different drips, etc., I can even stamp it, which sometimes I do, meaning boom, boom, I'm angry, I'm stamping, okay? And that helps the drips go down too. But you can see how nice it is all arranged in rainbow order, and of course, my stamp ink is staying put. So I'm gonna put this over here to dry, and I have one that is already dry, and you can see it right here. Now this has been cut down to about 11 by 11. And one of the other things about using a lot of color is it really helps if you place it on a piece of black cardstock, and by framing it, it makes it even easier to see. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down. Now, some people worry about using really heavy papers and stuff in their scrapbook albums, and I don't think you have to. I think you just need to use a really sticky adhesive, and then you're fine. And I do, when I'm using a really heavy paper, like to do a big X right through the center, because I think that helps adhere that heavy paper. So then I'm going to go ahead and put it down. Here you go, okay? So my background is started. So now it's time to create, well, my photo area. Now here's one of the things that you can do when you're creating a photo area. If you have a bunch of different photos that again are really brightly colored, because the thing about color is you need to manage it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my photos and I'm going to put them onto a white background. That white background creates a visual rest for your eyes. That's really important. So I'm just gonna put them right onto this white sheet of cardstock, and then I am going to take a little roller here and I'm going to pop it on out. It works sort of like a ballpoint pen, and then keeping it at a 1 o'clock angle. And by the way, I can see the heart is going to be upside down if I do it this way, so I want to make sure to turn this towards myself so I can get the hearts going the way that I want them to. And I'm going to go ahead and roll that out, and it's going to add a beautiful finishing touch, okay? So once I have this, you could of course do a border with it or anything else. I can add some journaling, and boom, now I have, it's not quite a Polaroid effect, but it has that look of a matte, which is nice and clean and keeps all these bright colors nicely separated. Really important. Think of it like framing, matting, that kind of stuff. So if I bring my layout in, I'm ready to start building now, and I really want to have, you know, reflecting the flowers in here, it's important to have a flower embellishment. So at the craft store, you can buy lots of these silk flowers really inexpensively. So if you just pull them apart, you can then really easily take a stamp. And I think for this one, let's go with a different pattern. So I like this honeycomb pattern because, again, flowers, bees, pollination, it makes me think of all those kinds of things. So I'm actually going to flip the flower over to the back, and again, I'm working on a protected surface, and I'm just going to apply the stamp kind of randomly to the back, and it's going to give it a really cool look from the front, which you can see here because the silk flower is thin enough that it comes through, but it almost softens it out in a vellum-like effect. So I have one here that I've done as well, and I let it sit for a little while because I wanted to make sure that that permanent ink was going to be dry, because now we're going to add some watercolor again, because we want to keep adding color everywhere, every step. Who doesn't want to live a brightly colored life? You know what I mean? I guess I wear a lot of black, but I generally like to live a brightly colored life everywhere else. So once I've put all that watercolor on, and you can certainly spray it to keep things going nice and moist and wet, okay, on there. I can layer those up. Let me put these aside. And what I get is an embellishment like this. And you can see I've just used brads to hold it together. So if we looked at the finished layout that my friend did, you can see how we have our colors managed. The black is helping everything, and it's a wonderful, colorful look. Now, I have a layout that's almost done that I want to show you right over here, okay? So this layout, you can see, uses a lot of the same things. We use rolling stamps, all sorts of stuff, and look at this cute embellishment. I want to show you how easy that is to do. I just took a plain piece of paper, and then I added some watercolor to half of it, because they wanted to take advantage of the fact that this is transparent, this tape, okay? So then I just went ahead and I rolled right over it, and you can see how you can see through it. So parts of it are white, parts of it are red, just super duper duper cool. And once it's done, all I did, if you look here, is you can see I cut my heart embellishment out of it, a great and easy way to make an embellishment, and you can see it on the page. But now we need to do the title on this page. So if I put my title down, it gets a little bit lost. That black, you can't really see it. However, vellum is a great way of calming something down. So if I layer these together, it's really easy to see it. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a really skinny adhesive. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on there, and you can spend some time really putting it on there. Put them together. I have one that's here. I just used a vellum adhesive on the back so you couldn't see through the vellum. Slap it onto my layout. It looks fantastic, super easy to do, and another colorful idea for you.